never thought I'd be writing this, but here I am. My wife and I have been together for 10 years, married for 8. We met in college and were each other's first and only. I always thought our relationship was something rare and beautiful, but it seems that was just me. A while ago, my wife started working at a new company. At first, she had a hard time fitting in since she's naturally reserved. I encouraged her to make friends, and eventually she joined a group of women. Some were single, others divorced, and a few were casually dating but not married. I was happy for her at first, but then things started to change. She began going out often, drinks, parties, and other plans with her friends. Her behavior concerned me, but I didn't want to seem controlling. I tried to talk to her, but at the same time, I didn't want to restrict her freedom. Still, it started affecting our marriage. My wife has never been the one to initiate intimacy, but now she was always too tired or not in the mood. Around this time, her company got a new manager. My wife and her friends seemed to take a liking to him, and she started mentioning him in casual conversations. Soon, though, she was pointing out how he handled situations that didn't sound work-related. I asked her why she was so focused on him, but she brushed me off. Around the same time, she asked me if I ever regretted not having more experiences with other women. I told her no because I was happy with her. When I said that, I thought I saw sadness in her eyes, but she quickly changed the subject. One day, she brought up the idea of an open marriage to spice things up. I was shocked. My wife had never been this kind of person, and she'd always been fairly conservative about sex. At first, I said no and asked if this had anything to do with her new manager. She denied it, saying she just felt like she'd missed out on something but didn't want to lose me. She thought this was a safer way to explore. Even though I felt uneasy, I eventually gave in. We made rules, one of them being that no one was allowed to bring anyone into our home. Over the next year, my wife went on dates, had one-night stands, and eventually started a relationship with her manager. I, on the other hand, went on a few dates but couldn't go further. It just felt wrong. My wife would check in and ask if I was okay, but she didn't change her behavior. Over time, I started to feel like something in me had died. That special feeling of love and innocence in our marriage was gone, and it hurt deeply. Then I met someone new, a woman, who had recently moved from South Korea. She was amazing. Conversation flowed easily, and she had a sense of humor and a smile that made me forget everything. We started seeing each other more often, and eventually we became intimate. I never knew it was possible to feel so wanted and desired by someone. At first, my wife found it amusing that I'd met someone, but as time went on, she started questioning my relationship with this woman. I reminded her this whole arrangement was her idea, and pointed out that she was in a relationship with her manager. She didn't respond. Instead, she began trying to win me back, coming home early, cooking dinners, cleaning the house more often, dropping off lunch at my workplace, and even initiating intimacy in the bedroom. If this had happened earlier in our marriage, I would have been thrilled. But after everything, it felt empty. When I did give in to her attempts at intimacy, it was only to avoid conflict. Something inside me had shifted, and I could tell she felt it too. I asked her what had caused this sudden change. She said she wanted to prove that she loved me and was happy with me. I couldn't help but laugh. I asked her about her friends, her manager, and the one-night stands. She didn't answer and went to bed crying. The next day, she told me she wanted to close the marriage. She said the entire thing was a huge mistake, that she regretted everything, and wanted us to focus on each other again. I asked her to be honest about what had caused all of this. She admitted it was her group of friends who planted the idea. They'd encouraged her to embrace their lifestyle, and when the manager showed interest, he supported it too. It started as an emotional affair and later became physical. Once the marriage was open, she said it felt thrilling, like being drunk behind the wheel of a speeding car, but it wasn't worth it. Now she says she sees how special our marriage was and regrets everything. She told me she feels like she destroyed what we had and fears she can never fix it. I told her I might never be able to see her as my wife again. She broke down in tears, and I held her until she fell asleep in my arms. Since then, she's left her job, cut off her friends and the manager, and promised to spend the rest of her life making it up to me. She's even said she'll do whatever it takes to be my wife again. But the truth is, I haven't cut ties with my lover. This woman makes me feel alive and gives me something I haven't felt in years. I don't know what to do. I'd like to feel that connection with my wife again, but I don't know if it's even possible. My lover was there for me when I felt broken and gave me strength when I had none. I'm still trying to process everything. We had our first marriage counseling session recently, and I'm not sure how it went. The therapist seemed nice and experienced. She came across as unbiased and eager to help. During the session, my wife decided to open up and share everything. She confessed that her group of friends had made her feel like she was missing out on life. They talked about how much fun they'd had, while she had only ever been with me. It made her wonder if she'd missed her chance to experience life fully because she'd committed to her first boyfriend. Most of these friends were either single, divorced, or casually dating. None of them were married. The therapist explained that this mindset can be very damaging to a marriage because it creates feelings of dissatisfaction and doubt. My wife admitted that when the new manager started giving her attention, her friends encouraged her to explore it. They told her it was an opportunity to discover herself. She said she felt guilty about it, but convinced herself that nothing physical was happening, so it wasn't a problem. Then one of her divorced friends suggested an open marriage as a loophole. Her friend claimed it could strengthen our marriage and allow her to experience more, while keeping us together. That's when she came to me with the idea and pushed for it. My wife said she got caught up in the excitement and thrill of it all. It was intoxicating at first, but it didn't have the depth or meaning of what we had built over the years. She told herself I would eventually come around and accept the situation. But that changed once I met my lover. She said she noticed how I started smiling again, how my face would light up when I got a text, and how cheerful I was when I left the room to take a call. She admitted that seeing me happy with someone else made her feel sick to her stomach. She began having panic attacks and didn't know why at first. She went to her friends for advice, but they dismissed her feelings and told her it was normal for me to act this way during the adventure. However, one of her divorced friends, the same one who suggested the open marriage, eventually made a comment that hit her hard. She said it looked like my lover made me happy. That's when the reality of the situation finally hit my wife. She realized how much damage she had caused and the real possibility that I might never come back to her. She begged her friends for advice on how to win me back, but they dismissed her again, telling her she shouldn't have opened the marriage if she couldn't handle it. At that moment, my wife said she knew these people were toxic and dangerous for our marriage. That's when she decided to cut them off and start trying to repair the damage. She said seeing me happy with someone else was unbearable, and she hated herself for pushing us into this situation. During the counseling session, I didn't say much. I told the therapist about my relationship with my lover and admitted she was still in the picture. The therapist said it would be impossible to find a resolution in our marriage as long as my lover was involved. She suggested we take some time and book another appointment to work through things. She also said it was rare for someone to stay with their first partner this long and hinted that we could overcome this if we wanted to. It felt like she wanted us to become one of her success stories. Later that night, I moved into an apartment my brother owns. He offered it to me for free, but I insisted on paying a small rent. I've been staying there since. During our second counseling session, I asked my wife a few questions that had been weighing on my mind. 1. Did anything physical happen with her manager before we opened the marriage? At first, she avoided answering. She begged me not to make her say it, saying it would destroy us. But after I pushed, she admitted that while nothing fully physical happened, they had touched themselves in front of each other. She said he convinced her it wasn't cheating since there was no physical contact. When she told me this, I was floored. She broke down crying, shaking, and hyperventilating. Even the counselor looked shocked. My wife got on her knees, grabbed my legs, and begged me to forgive her. 2. What changed her view of him? She said she started to pull away from the group, and his behavior towards her shifted. One night after a meeting, she overheard him talking about her to a coworker. He bragged about how easy it was to get her, and joked that quiet women can't be trusted. When the coworker asked if he had feelings for her, he said she was just a pleasant distraction, and that he had no intention of leaving his fiancée. He added that he felt bad for me but said, "You snooze, you lose." Hearing this crushed her. She said she realized she was nothing more than a meaningless fling to him. She felt sick and left work immediately, vomiting in the parking lot. Her first thought was, "What have I done?" She said she hated herself in that moment and realized the gravity of her actions. Thus, did she ever love him, and when did she stop loving me? She told me she never stopped loving me, which honestly made everything feel worse. She said what she felt for him wasn't love. It was just different and exciting. She thought it was love at the time, but now sees how foolish she was. She grabbed my arm and said she missed us and the connection we used to have. She even suggested we move away and start over, just the two of us. I told her that wouldn't be fair to my lover and said I needed time apart to figure things out. She had a complete meltdown at those words. She cried hysterically, held on to me like I was going to vanish, and begged me not to leave. The counselor eventually calmed her down and convinced her that time apart might help us both heal. When we got home, my wife got a video call from one of her former friends. The friend was in tears. It turns out she had started an affair with the same manager after my wife left her job. She also had a boyfriend at the time, but got involved with the manager out of curiosity. She later had a pregnancy scare, which caused the manager to completely turn on her. When her boyfriend found out about the affair, he left her. The friend said she had called my wife because she thought my wife had saved her marriage and was desperate for advice. I didn't say anything. I just left and went back to my apartment. Things have taken a turn, and I feel like I'm seeing my wife's behavior change more each day, but I'm still not sure how I feel about it all. I'll share what's happened so far and where things stand. One of my wife's former friends, the one who had the pregnancy scare, was indeed pregnant. However, the stress of losing her boyfriend and the shame of the affair caused her to lose the baby. After that, she completely spiraled. She exposed the manager to the higher-ups at their company and his fiancée. Out of curiosity, I looked up his fiancée on Facebook. She's a special needs teacher, family-oriented, and seems like the kind of person who's grounded and kind. Seeing her profile made me wonder how someone like him could betray someone like her. The former friend also contacted me. She wanted to hear my side of the story because she was collecting evidence against the manager. She wanted to meet in person, and since we both had negative COVID tests, I agreed. When I saw her, it was clear she was in bad shape. She looked exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes and a haunted expression. She apologized for her role in my wife's choices and for the pain it caused. She didn't shift any blame and said she wanted to take responsibility for her actions. I asked her why she was going to such lengths to expose the manager. She said losing both her child and her boyfriend changed her as a person. She could barely look in the mirror because of how disgusted she felt with herself. She said she wanted to hold the manager accountable for everything, even if it meant ruining her own career in the process. She left after getting my side of the story and apologized again. Later, I had to go back to our old house to pick up some things. I timed it for when I thought my wife wouldn't be home. But she was there. She was sitting at the coffee table, looking at our wedding photos and other pictures from the past. When she noticed me, she tried to hug me, but I gently pushed her away. She offered me lunch, but I declined, saying I wouldn't be staying long. She told me she had something to show me and pulled out her phone. She showed me a message she'd received 2 days earlier from her former manager. He was furious and had found a way to contact her after she blocked his old number. The message was full of insults and anger, because my wife had helped her friend expose him to the company and his fiancée. She told me she got the idea to expose him from forums, like Chump Lady and Marriage Builders. She thought that by bringing everything to light, it would remove the secrecy and give us a better chance at fixing things. I told her it was brave of her to do that, but it didn't change anything between us. I also told her I was stopping marriage counseling and would focus on individual counseling instead. She cried softly and said she understood, as much as I wanted to feel something. Anger at how long it took her to act or gratitude for her effort. I just felt numb. I don't feel anything toward her right now, and that's not normal. That's why I need to work on myself in individual counseling. At my brother's suggestion, I've also seen a divorce lawyer to protect myself, just in case. I haven't filed anything, but I wanted to be prepared. Before I left the house, my wife tried to initiate intimacy. When I refused, she broke down and started yelling, asking what my lover could give me that she couldn't. She shouted that whatever I wanted, she would do it. Her voice was so loud that I'm sure the neighbors heard. I just shook my head and told her that if she still didn't understand after everything, it was clear where our marriage was headed. Then I left. It feels like my wife is finally seeing the full consequences of her actions. I believe she truly regrets what she's done and wishes she could undo it all. But life doesn't work that way. Maybe she'll take this time to figure herself out and become a better partner. But I don't think that will be with me. She's already burned everything we had. At this point, I've realized how much everything has changed. And I don't think things will ever go back to the way they were. My wife seems desperate to repair what we had, but I'm not sure if it's even possible anymore. One of the most recent moments that showed how much damage has been done happened when I went back to the house to grab some things. My wife tried to initiate intimacy, and when I refused, she completely broke down. She started yelling, asking what my lover does for me that she can't. She demanded to know what my lover gives me that she hasn't. Her voice was so loud, I'm sure the neighbors heard her. She said that whatever I wanted, she'd do it. Anything at all. I just shook my head and told her that if she couldn't understand the difference after everything that's happened, it was clear where our marriage was heading. Then I left. The truth is, I think my wife has finally started to see the full weight of her decisions. She knows now that what she did destroyed the life we had together. She regrets everything, and I believe she'd give anything to go back and make different choices. But the reality is that we can't undo the past. Maybe she'll figure herself out and become a better person, maybe even a better partner. But I don't think she'll ever get the chance to do that with me. She burned everything down, and I don't think there's a way to rebuild it. One thing I'm sure of is that she'll never forget what she did, and she'll carry that regret for the rest of her life.